There comes a time when the scripts we've been handed no longer fit. The roles we've played, dutiful child, ambitious worker, responsible parent, begin to feel like costumes that no longer suit the person wearing them. The achievements we were told would bring fulfillment now seem hollow. The approval we once craved loses its taste. Something stirs beneath the surface. A quiet but insistent voice that whispers, "There must be more than this. This is not a crisis. It is an awakening." For most of human history, life beyond 40 was considered a privilege, not a given. But in our time, it has become something else entirely. A second birth, a chance to shed the skins of expectation and finally meet oneself. The first half of life is spent building careers, relationships, identities. The second half is for unbuilding, for peeling away the layers of who we thought we were supposed to be, until all that remains is who we actually are. The first 40 years are lived largely by accident. We absorb values without questioning them, chase goals without examining why, mold ourselves to fit the spaces society carves for us. Education, career, marriage, children. These milestones arrive like stations on a predetermined route. We board each train without asking where it's headed, only to wake one day with the unsettling realization that we never chose the destination. This is not failure. It is the necessary prelude to true living. One must be lost before being found. The moment of reckoning arrives differently for everyone. For some, it's a quiet discontent that grows louder with each passing year. For others, it's a sudden rupture, a career that no longer satisfies, a relationship that no longer fits, a version of oneself that no longer feels real. The structures that once provided stability now feel like cages. This unraveling is often mistaken for breakdown. In truth, it is breakthrough. The psyche, having outgrown its old containers, begins breaking them apart from within. What seems like destruction is actually the first stirrings of creation. The second half of life demands confrontation with all we've denied in ourselves. The passions we buried to appear responsible. The talents we neglected to seem practical. The truths we swallowed to keep peace. These disowned fragments do not disappear. They gather in the shadows, growing heavier with each passing year. Now they demand attention. The creative spirit stifled for decades begins pounding at the walls of neglect. The adventurous self sacrificed for security howls for expression. The parts of us we deemed unacceptable, our anger, our sensuality, our unconventional dreams refuse to stay buried any longer. This reckoning is not punishment. It is invitation. What follows is a kind of death, not of the body, but of the persona. The carefully constructed mask of who we thought we should be begins to crack. The roles that once defined us, the perfect parent, the tireless worker, the always pleasant friend, no longer fit. This death is terrifying. Without our familiar identities, who are we? But it is also liberating. Only when the false self dies can the true self breathe. Emergence is slow, like a snake shedding skin or a butterfly leaving its chrysalis. The process cannot be rushed. Old habits cling. Societal expectations pull like gravity. The temptation to slip back into comfortable falsehoods never fully disappears. Yet gradually, something new takes shape. Not the person we were told to be, but the one we've always been beneath the shoulds and musts. The artist who buried their paints for spreadsheets. The wanderer who traded adventure for stability. The thinker who silenced their questions to avoid rocking the boat. These suppressed selves, long treated as enemies, become our wisest guides. A curious liberation comes with this awakening. The diminishing need for external validation. The opinions that once dictated our choices. What will people think? What if I fail? Am I doing this right? Lose their power, not through effort, but through irrelevance. Like a spell breaking, we suddenly see the absurdity of shaping our lives around judgments from people who don't live with our regrets. This is not apathy, it is clarity. With this awakening comes a new relationship to time. The frantic striving of youth, the race to achieve, to acquire, to prove oneself, gives way to something quieter. Not resignation, but focus. The understanding that time is finite lends weight to each choice. We become ruthless about what deserves our days and protective of what truly feeds our souls. No longer do we ask, "What should I do?" Now the question becomes, what is worth doing? The great work of the second half is not building, but weaving. Taking the scattered threads of our experience, the successes and failures, the loves and losses, the personas we've worn and discarded, and crafting them into something cohesive. Not perfect, not pristine, but whole. This is where true wisdom begins. Not in knowing more, but in recognizing how little we've known ourselves. Living authentically sounds noble until you try it. To stand in one's truth is to risk disappointing those who loved the version of you they imagined. It means facing the terror of no longer being who others need you to be. Yet this is the only path to peace. The relief of finally aligning outer life with inner truth outweighs any temporary discomfort. Like removing a shoe that's pinched for decades, the joy is not in the removal, but in realizing how much pain we'd normalized. The measures of a life well-lived shift, where once we asked how much and how high, now we ask how true and how deep. Success is no longer about accumulation, but alignment. Not about reaching heights, but plumbing depths. The external trappings that once signaled achievement, titles, possessions, visible markers of status, become secondary to the quiet markers of an authentic life. Integrity, presence, the courage to keep growing. What emerges in this second act often surprises us. Talents buried since childhood resurface. Forgotten passions reignite. Relationships deepen or dissolve based on their capacity for truth. The self we discover is both stranger and more familiar than we imagined, like meeting someone we've known all our lives, but are just now recognizing. This is not an endpoint, but a beginning. The authentic life is not a state to achieve, but a path to walk. Some days we stumble back into old patterns. Other days we surprise ourselves with newfound courage. The key is no longer reaching some imagined finish line, but showing up for the daily practice of being real, of choosing truth over comfort again and again, even, especially, when no one is watching. We spend our first 40 years climbing ladders placed for us by others. The next 40 are for asking whether the ladders were leaning against the right walls. And when we discover they weren't, that's when real living begins. Not with fanfare or dramatic reinvention, but with quiet, daily choices to honor the self we've always been, but are only now meeting. The tragedy is not that this awakening comes too late. The miracle is that it comes at all.